Good afternoon. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank, it's my pleasure to welcome you to ADB's new online knowledge and innovation platform, Southeast Asia Development Solutions. This platform intends to introduce new technologies and innovation, support knowledge sharing, and provide best practice insight to address Southeast Asia's evolving development challenges. COVID-19 is devastating the tourism industry around the world. The United Nations forecasts that there would be up to 78% fewer international tourist arrivals in 2020, drastically lower than the record high of 1.5 billion milestone set in 2019. Southeast Asia is expected to be among the hardest hit regions, with millions of tourism-related jobs at risk and billions lost in income. This is going to affect the trinket sellers in the beaches of Bali to the upscale hoteliers in Bangkok. You see, this scarf was made by women in our livelihood support project in Myanmar. They had escaped poverty through selling these scarves to tourists. Now people all over our region are going to sleep hungry. Inequality is rising and we must act now or lose 10 years of progress made in the battle against poverty. As announced earlier this year, ADB is strongly committed to help our members save lives and ensure economies rebound from COVID-19 crisis as swiftly as possible. The challenge is bigger than anything that we faced before, and everyone needs to work together. And MasterCard mentioned cutting out the middlemen in India for farmers during this crisis. I think there are much more that can be done. How can ADB help to pilot and upscale? After this panel, we're launching the Hackathon, Reestablishing Tourism Confidence Through Innovative Digital Solutions, in partnership with Amazon Web Services, 500 startups, the Mekong Tourism Coordination Office, Raffles, and ADB Ventures. So once again, ADB welcomes you to the Southeast Asia Development Solutions platform, and we sincerely thank you for joining today's panel discussions and hackathon launch.
Okay, well, great. Thank you very much, Cleo, for your opening words and for your expressing your confidence and your concern that we can get over this crisis. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's hackathon launch and panel discussion on reestablishing tourism confidence using innovative digital solutions. We're going to run for about 45 minutes this afternoon. My name is Schipani, and I'll be the moderator. I'm the ADB staff that's responsible for our tourism work that we're doing in Southeast Asia, mainland Southeast Asia. We have other colleagues from ADB that are working on tourism and innovation joining us today as well as an amazing panel of very, very talented expertise from around the region that are going to share some insights about how we can instill travelers' confidence, help SMEs get through this COVID downturn. I've been with ADB for more than 10 years now, and I've been based in the region for about 25. I'm joining the discussion today from my home here in Luang Prabang, Lao PDR, that like many destinations in Southeast Asia has been seriously affected in terms of tourism downturn, however, has managed the COVID pandemic quite well, as has other countries in Southeast Asia. So with that, let me just introduce our panelists before we go into the discussion. Firstly, joining us from Bangkok, Thailand, we have Mr. Jens Tranhart, and he is the Executive Director of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, with years and years of experience in the region on tourism marketing, technology innovation, and tourism planning. We also have Mr. Hai Ho, and Hai, he is the co-founder and the CEO of Trip.com. He's based in Vietnam and joining us from Ho Chi Minh City today, I believe. And thirdly, we have two colleagues from ADB that are based in Manila. We have Miss Carolyn Dedolph-Cabrera, and she's our principal information technology specialist with ADB's Digital Innovation Sandbox. as well as Miss Allison Woods. And Allison is a senior urban development specialist in ADB's Southeast Asia Department, who's also working on tourism where we're based, where ADB is based in Manila. So once again, I want to thank you, Cleo, for the opening remarks, and thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for what I think is going to be a very timely and relevant discussion. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Jens, if I could start with you, because I know you're working on from a regional perspective. As the director of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, you're working closely with governments and the private sector to promote tourism here in Southeast Asia. And you've done a fantastic job. I mean, 2019 set records in terms of international tourist arrivals in the region. Tourism employment and tourism spending was higher than ever. Here we are in 2019, a very different and very difficult situation. We're facing our worst downturn in generations. So, from where you sit, what are some of your thoughts on how we can use digital solutions or digital technology to help instill consumers' confidence to travel, but also to help small and medium enterprises kind of weather the storm over what looks like is going to be months ahead of us? Jens, please.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And I'd like to thank the Asian Development Bank for inviting the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, not only to partner in this important initiative, but also to participate in this panel. So thank you very much. And also for the continuous support in helping us on the regional tourism collaboration in the Greater Mekong sub-region. It's very important and very much appreciated by the member countries. I think what I'd like to say is, on one hand, in 2019 and before, we had a new buzzword called over-tourism, something obviously that we don't really see right now because borders are closed. And even though there have been some overcrowding in some domestic destinations, pretty much this whole phenomenon of over-tourism has kind of like disappeared. It may return, but it's obviously an interesting time for us to now develop a tourism industry that is more balanced and can avoid, these kind of issues like over-tourism and also not inclusive tourism, where tourism is not distributed equally to various stakeholders. So I think on one hand, even though we're going through some very challenging times, especially with various businesses have challenges to stay open and pay their employees, still we can look at it also somewhat from a positive standpoint, since we don't really have a choice. Now, one thing that we have been seeing is that digital transformation has been accelerated. Many people that had never went on Zoom and would never go on a virtual conference. I mean, as you know, Stephen, we had our first tourism working group meeting. This was the 45th working group meeting. The first time was virtually, and it worked. It was obviously different. So, I mean, we've seen an increased comfort level in digital solutions. Now, when we look at startups that can help in this region, I would want to point out 5 areas that I think are interesting. The first one is job creation. Obviously there's new tools and new skills that are required, from cybersecurity. We see a lot of digital issues that have popped up, big data, and also digital marketing. So I think this is an opportunity also now where we see a shift in jobs and in skills, especially also in the tourism industry. The second thing is open innovation. I think open innovation is something that especially this group should be very interested in. Open innovation is basically where startups, corporations, governments collaborate to find solutions. Something that we always want to happen. We created MIST with the Asian Development Bank and Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, the Mekong Innovative Startups in Tourism, where we try to do exactly that. But I think even more important now, open innovation becomes more important. I'll give you one example. Emirates, Emirates Airlines, the Dubai Tourism Authority, and a developer of COVID-19 rapid tests got together, to kind of create a solution for a much needed area, to kind of gain more confidence, increase more confidence for travelers. The next one I would say is smart destinations. And smart destinations has been a buzzword before, but again, is becoming more important now with using AI, artificial intelligence, to make data-driven decisions, blockchain, and I know we have Mr. Hai here who can tell us much more about blockchain, augmented reality, geolocation, and all in a sense to allow travelers to regain confidence, which is, I think, the most critical point. If travelers don't have confidence, they won't travel even if borders are open. And I think the reopening of borders is also important to have a consistent process in place based on technical criteria. So this is where technology can actually come in, because consistency is very difficult to control when it is really on human areas. So I think this is where technology come in. Also, hygiene standards is another thing, tracing apps and COVID-19 screenings. The next thing I would point out is inclusive tourism. And that also I would throw in sustainable tourism with that as well. So I think there we have rural experiences and social enterprises. Also, it's a great opportunity to kind of conserve wildlife, child protection, another area that we need to look at, and climate change as well, which is an existential threat that doesn't go away because of COVID-19. What we have done here, as you pointed out before, is we created the Experience Mekong Collection, an alliance of over 300 small responsible travel businesses and social enterprises that we kind of brought together to build a destination brand, Experience Mekong, to really then promote these small businesses to drive inclusive tourism and sustainability. The more social enterprises that create a social impact, the more sustainability we can create and the more sustainable the destination becomes. So this is also something that now during this time, these members actually come together and they help each other. And that also drives resilience, not just for COVID-19, but also for future crisis situations. And the last thing I'd like to point out is communications. I think communications is important in the age of fake news, when people don't really know who to trust anymore, So I think it needs to be strategic, it needs to be smart, and it needs to be trustworthy, And there also technology comes in to really kind of look at apps and look at verification of information, if it's correct. We've seen a lot of there with various elections all around the world, not to point one out, especially where obviously there's some technology companies like Twitter and Facebook are looking to combat fake news. But I think especially with COVID-19, in order to open the borders again, people want to trust the information. They want to know, do I get sick or is it safe to travel to somewhere? So I think that's quickly, I think my quick intervention there. I think from a startup standpoint, I think on one hand, obviously startups always, have a difficult time. I've had startups before, to really accelerate into an area where they can have traction. But on the other hand, we've seen a lot of startups that pivoted very quickly and developed additional solutions to the existing solutions to combat this pandemic. And then there are a few initiatives, and I just point out one, UNWTO Healing Solutions. So they kind of partnered the UNWTO, the World Tourism Organization, with the World Health Organizations to come up and promote startups and ventures that mitigate the impact of the pandemic and also help to kickstart the recovery effort. For the Mekong region, obviously, I think this is important because we need to kind of leverage these startups, these innovations to then, when borders open, to really have a resilient and sustainable tourism industry. Thank you.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Jens. And some of those messages that you have, especially on clear, trustworthy information, I really think that's so important. You touched on some other topics. I think that some other panelists are going to bring some insights on smart destination planning and others. And what I really like is, this Mekong Tourism Office, you mentioned your Experience Mekong Collection. I actually know many of those business owners and visit those restaurants or those shops and others. And this is something that they are coming together. They're using that platform to stay in touch with their clients. So once again, this aspect of, okay, we're down, but we're not out. And that's certainly the case. We know tourism is a resilient industry. This comeback is going to be a little bit longer than it has in the past. but we certainly know there'll be a comeback coming. And this, digital marketing tools and others that you mentioned, I think are, tremendously important. And there's many startups in the region that bring innovative ways of doing it, that can build on examples like Explore Mekong or some others that you mentioned. So thank you for that. Because you touched on technology, a couple different points of technology, mentioning things like artificial intelligence, big data, and others, I'm going to go to Carolyn, my colleague from ADB. I mentioned she's with our Digital Sandbox program, and they're working with technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, robotics, and big data to help devise solutions to some of Southeast Asia, or really Asia and the Pacific's, big development challenges. So with that, Carolyn, could you give us, some of your insights or some of your ideas on how I know it's a lot, these 4 fields, it's very, very broad. I mean, please feel free to narrow in on 1 or 2 areas, but how these technologies can be used to help instill confidence among people to travel again, whether it's domestically or to cross borders. Carolyn.
Sure, pleasure. We're also working to advance ADB too, using advanced technologies. So the aim of our Innovation Sandbox program is to really promote fresh ways of doing things in ADB as well as in its operations. And so hosting hackathon challenges like this one is one of these. And we really value taking real challenges and finding solutions that can have real impact in the world. So it's a very exciting space to be in right now. So the importance of digital for development is greater than ever, just because of the times that we're living in, obviously, because of COVID. But even before COVID, every sector was starting to really experiment with digital. And as you said earlier, COVID has just, or as Cleo said, COVID has just sped this up even more. So things are happening faster than ever. And of course, tourism is one of the hardest hit sectors, as we've heard already, and especially here in Southeast Asia. So as countries are looking for ways to really open up and drive economic activity, the near-term challenges are COVID testing and tracing, social distancing and hygiene, like what Jens was saying, access to medical care, and also guidance to the industry, governance, and operations. So it's basically trying to figure out how to make people feel confident, right? Which is the whole thrust of this challenge and this talk today at the round table. So these things are really truly necessary to build our confidence that when people travel, think about us, we want to really be able to relax and enjoy and see what we want to see and not be worried about getting sick or, having to be in quarantine all the time. So during this transition to the new normal, we have to absolutely provide confidence. And this can only be achieved through evidence and using data, like what Jens was saying also before. The data coming out this year is reflecting, for example, that transmission during the airplane travel is actually extremely low, at least from what I've been reading. But do a lot of people know that? It's fairly safe to actually travel, but the problem is getting on that plane and then getting off that plane, right, and moving. So how we can communicate evidence-based facts to people using good communications and using marketing to be able to help people go back to normal. A couple of other areas. First is using IoT, Internet of Things devices, such as Bluetooth wristbands, to really help promote the social distancing in resorts and other tourist destinations. And these would give warnings to everyone who's wearing them. So for example, if there are more than a few people or the designated number of people gathering, say for a big wedding or for something, people would be alerted. And so this would help to keep social distancing in place. Another thing also is it could warn you about people who are under quarantine who maybe have strayed out, to make certain that those people in the swimming pool aren't supposed to be, in their room under quarantine. They're actually safe and, and can be there. Another technology that could be used is satellite imagery and drones. And this could be used for the crowd detection at popular tourist destinations or events. For example, say you're in Bali and there's a big wedding happening, right? Okay, so the tourist police or whoever could make certain that didn't happen, for example, or too many people at a particular temple in Angkor Wat at one time. So then tourists, please, for example, could then make certain that people aren't bunched up in one area. So those technologies could also be used. Digital health status passports are another thing that could potentially be used, where they would show that you were tested, your status, and they would be accepted to be able to allow people to have more normal kinds of cross-border movements. So that means that there'd have to be agreements between governments, which I know the Mekong sub-region program has promoted a lot of in the past, but this is, I guess, a modern case where that would have to take place. And then another thing could be crowd density data for tourist destinations. So this could be broadcast to drive tourists to safe destinations and to make certain that they're going at the right times. So for remote places, for example, where really there's no COVID issues like what we were talking about earlier, then people could go there. Or for example, early morning, late evening, the crowds are low, people would be able to see that, and then they could plan their visit accordingly. Kind of like what the grocery stores do now, where you can check when are the peak times. So those are some of the ideas I'd like to share. Thank you.
Oh, Karen, that's fantastic. And I have to say, super relevant. And the reason for that is because, Jens mentioned over-tourism, right? So this idea of, large crowds in a select number of tourist destinations that really diminish the experience for everyone. But now that we have the imperative to protect people's health, the destination managers are really listening on this. Like, we know that Singapore did a great job on traffic congestion management, right? With congestion pricing and some others. So these technologies that you mentioned, it's really an opportunity for congestion management at tourist destinations, which would, one, make the visitors' experience much better, two, protect their health. And the third part of it is actually, I would say all destinations now are talking about, we want less tourists, but we want higher value tourists. How do we get greater yield, greater spending out of tourists, the type of tourist that's going to visit here, that's going to spend more? Well, certainly you need to manage the number of people in a destination to do that. So solutions like that, if we could bring these to a destination manager or a specific site manager, that's very, very exciting. And that's actually something that was on the table for a long time. People always, we can't do it. If tourists will complain. Well, now there are tourists that they're asking for it. We have demand from the, demand side. I think that's a great opportunity to introduce those. So thank you for raising those. We're still on tech, and I'm going to jump right now to Mr. Hai. Trip is actually using blockchain technology, blockchain-enabled travel platform, which is allowing direct interaction and contracts between travelers, where they put their information out and let suppliers look at it, matching them with tourism service providers. A contract is created. I'm not a blockchain expert, so I can't explain it. I may leave it to Hai to explain this, but a contract is created, and you've really, helped to create this amazing marketplace, among consumers and among suppliers of tourism products and services. You've even created your own cryptocurrency. I see you're a young guy. You're a startup now. I think your company is less than 5 or 10 years old, less than 5 years old. And so you actually helped to found, you're the CEO and co-founder of Trip.com. Amazingly, I think you have access to inventory of something like 29 million hotel rooms or accommodations and about 6,000 tour guides around the region. So, how is the Trip community? You've created this amazing community. How are they adapting, to this COVID-19 downturn? And what are some things that you see your users doing or asking for to manage uncertainty? This might be uncertainty about traveling domestically, this reliable information to get across borders that we've heard about on the panel already. Please, Mr. Hai, what are you hearing, through your big data machine there?
Thank you a lot for the questions, and also thank you, ADB, for the chance to share our story. I think what we do, the key differences between our companies and the other platform is we call ourselves a decentralized community, which means not the user and the one who create the platform, which is our companies, have the same responsibility and have the same ownerships. So each member of the community, they have a piece of the ownership of the platform through the token. And because of that, our relationship between the company and the customer is not just a client and the company anymore. We say that we're in this together. So we remember that in Vietnam, in the end of February and in the end of April, which is one of the darkest time for our companies and even for a lot of other travel companies, everything is shut down completely, right? And then basically there's no movement, and the community member, they were like, hey, they just send message to us and say, hey guys, as long as we still here and we still believe in the bigger vision, then you don't have to worry. And instead of like asking us to do something, they will say, guys, even though we don't travel right now, let's do something now. So we transform our proof of travel into proof of stay, which means everyone who posts a photo of staying home, they get some sort of reward from the community. And people share to do it together. So every day we have 500 photos from people to say that, hey, we are staying home. So the community pushed us to turn our business into something new that we don't expect at all. And also because of that, we saw that, okay, the community is still there, the people are still there, our customer with us, what can we do something now? So right now, some people think it's funny, but right now we are having to selling like products, print on demand t-shirts with travel coat. You cannot travel, but you can still buy something from the place you want to travel just to give a feeling. I heard that there are people who like 3 months staying at home, and there are people who traveling from their bedroom to their living room to the dining kitchens. So people are dying, and then all of this small thing make them feel better. And right now we extend to selling t-shirt. And I think we are proud that the community is the one that pushing us. That's number one. But also the second things we would like to share is that there's a lot of like government office in the past, because they enjoy the successful about 2019. There were so many customers and they were doing fine with the paper ticket. And they say, okay, we don't want technology because we were too busy. But because of the COVID, like the client say, hey, let's make a paperless system because we don't want to get paper around, we don't pass the contract. So I think in every crisis, that's what the time we see the best of the humanity coming out. And also I would like to share that coming from Vietnam, after the COVID-19, we are suffering the 3 tropical storms, one after one right now. There are 100,000 in the central of Vietnam that been under the flood. But again, people are trying to use cell phone, posting on social networks where their location, so that the rescue boat can come inside and help. So I think this is a very, very great time to look at the upsides of everything that's happening around. And also for us, we believe that this is a big reminder for everyone here. If we don't build a sustainable economy, not just travel, but like the whole process of economy, we're gonna see small things coming in. So please, let's do something. Let's take care small things within around ourselves, even our business, to make sure that we don't have to seize all of these challenges anymore.
Thank you. And that's, once again, a couple of takeaways I'm hearing from you is this idea of don't let people forget. Don't let people forget how beautiful Vietnam or Thailand or Philippines or any of these other countries in Southeast Asia are. So this idea of getting user-generated content out there, out into people's computer screens and in front of their eyes on social media or through platforms like yours is tremendously important and inexpensive to do. What someone might pay for, a traditional media ad or others, really, using digital tools and others to keep our destinations top of mind for travelers. So when they are ready to travel again, they'll be there. And the second part is this idea of reliability of the information. So there it is. You have your users. They're actually sitting there in the destination. That gets out to the world. This user-generated information I'll tend to trust someone that lives in that destination that tells me what the situation is there and others. So, that plays very much into what we've heard from the panel here, is getting that reliable, clear communications and information out there to travelers to, once again, to keep this idea of travel in their minds, let them know what the situation is. So when they're ready to move around again, whether it's domestically or internationally, they'll have that most up-to-date information. So thank you. Thanks a lot, Hi, for that. That's fantastic. And, it's TRIP with 2 I's. Okay, TRIP is the name of your firm. I just want to be clear on that. And you're doing amazing work, so thank you for those insights. Now we're going to go to my colleague, Allison from ADB. And last year, if we asked everyone, Allison, around the world, close your eyes, we're going to stop international tourism, and we're going to put a pause on domestic tourism. How would you reinvent tourism to be more sustainable, to be more inclusive? And as I mentioned, with you in our sideline discussion, is Allison, I think you're very fortunate. You work with our urban development division. Most tourism happens in urban areas, but we see that, we have these tremendous natural and cultural resources in Southeast Asia that people like to visit, using an urban center as a jump off point, to visit maybe a secondary or a nature destination or a small island or somewhere. But what are some of your thoughts on what are some of the physical and non-physical investments that are needed in these destinations to improve sustainability and inclusiveness? So when everyone opens up their eyes and we recover from these challenges of COVID, what do we need, and how would you like to see tourism destinations evolve going forward?
Thanks, Stephen. I think, as you said, if we last year we had no idea what the tourism picture would look like. Tourism was experiencing unprecedented growth, resulting in what Jens used the term over-tourism. So we were seeing a huge amount of pressure put on select popular tourism destinations. Here in the Philippines, Boracay was a prime example before it was closed for rehabilitation. And that was causing, pollution, rising pollution levels in the surrounding environment, inappropriate developments through clearing of natural habitats like mangrove forest to make room for more tourism development to respond to all the growth. But with COVID, yes, it's been devastating to the tourism industry, but it does provide the opportunity to hit the reset button and potentially move towards a more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive tourism growth path, if it's used as an opportunity to make some of the critical investments needed to support that transition. So some of the key investments, particularly, are around sanitation, so investing in sewage development to reduce pollution from wastewater. The other one being improved solid waste management systems, so improved collection, disposal, and recycling to stop plastic pollution and other solid waste from entering the environment, but also other green investments like in renewable energy to improve access to improve electricity services, make these more sustainable. And also, we've been talking about all these digital tools, and they're absolutely critical for recovery and the future growth of the tourism industry. But you need the internet infrastructure to support that. So that's another critical investment is an internet connectivity to some of the tourism destinations in the region. Non-physical investments are equally important. These include the introduction and enforcement of regulations around pollution, as I mentioned, conservation of protected areas to support the physical investments. Other things around, we heard from other speakers about the need to better manage tourism numbers to avoid over-tourism. So putting into place visitor entry restrictions based on assessed physical carrying capacity limits, introducing things like ecotourism development fees to not only as a demand management measure, but also to support some of the critical physical investments that I mentioned. Also, investments in skills training for tourism workers, particularly those who have become unemployed. Often there's a mismatch between the tourism skills that the private sector is demanding and the skills that workers have been provided with through traditional training institutions. So not only do we need to upskill tourism workers, but we need to make sure they have the right skills. And particularly now, digital literacy and digital skills development is absolutely critical, given the rising role of digital tools in supporting recovery. And then finally, support programs to support small and medium enterprises to help them improve their competitiveness through upgrading of their products and services to really be able to tap into tourism markets once tourism starts to bounce back. So in summary, the current pause in tourism, if it's used as an opportunity to make these critical investments that I've talked about, can really help us support more sustainable and inclusive tourism post-COVID. Thank you.
Nice, Allison. Thank you. And, it's amazing. I've worked, like I say, with ADB for many years in the tourism sector and around Southeast Asia. So often when I speak with friends and colleagues that, aren't working in the sector, and they'll say, Stephen, you do tourism projects, but I see that you're, helping to finance wastewater treatment plants and landfills and embankment protection and others. What does that have to do with tourism? And you've really, eloquently stated exactly what it has to do with tourism. Without these good public investments and, to look after the public goods, to make sure destinations are clean, can show they have good sanitation and they're well managed. Those are the destinations that are going to be competitive when we come out of the COVID crisis. And those destinations that are making those investments now, to make sure we have proper green space, that are transitioning to clean energy, that are cleaning up their water, cleaning up sanitation and others, these are going to be the competitive destinations. Those that lag behind will be less competitive and the recovery would be much longer on that side. The private sector is very dynamic. Mr. Hai, you've demonstrated that, how dynamic the private sector is. At the same time, the public sector needs to also be moving forward on these public goods investments to make sure our destinations are still safe and clean and others when we come out of COVID. So with that, Allison, I have another question for you. Because like I said, you're very fortunate. I know you're preparing a tourism project together with the government of the Philippines on Coron and El Nido, two amazing islands out there. What specifically have you heard from some of the stakeholders there in terms of, what they'd like to see in terms of support for whether it's digital literacy that you mentioned, using digital tools for marketing, perhaps internets of things and others, looking at some other safety measures that we can take. What are you hearing from the field?
That's a very good question. Among small and medium enterprises, I think given we are moving into this new digital era, really small enterprises are requiring support around having access to digital platforms, being able to, so that their customers can make digital bookings, things like digital check-ins, contactless check-in at hotels, and also payment systems as well. So moving away from cash, which is the main payment form currently with a lot of small enterprises, and being able to move cashless. Other areas where they need support is, again, putting into place some of the health and safety protocols needed to boost tourism confidence. And to be able to allow physical distancing, again, to make sure that tourists are confident to come back. So yes, I think a key demand is around the digital tools and having access and the ability to use those, and then also to build tourism confidence by having in place the right health and safety protocols.
That's right. I mean, digital literacy is so important, and it really levels the playing field, allowing small and medium enterprises to suddenly connect with, global markets. Thank you. We have a couple questions from our audience, and I'd like to direct those to the panelists. Firstly, we have a question about blockchain technology. So, of course, Mr. Hai, this one is for you. How do you see blockchain technology being applied for health passports? We heard this concept of health passports. Carolyn raised it earlier. On the technical side, what do you think, Hai, on the use of blockchain for health passports?
I think health platforms, well, first of all, I think blockchains, the best use case of blockchains is where you don't have to see blockchains. In the end, it's still just a back-end technology. And honestly, you don't care how this like live stream platform work behind the scenes, right? You need to know that it just works. And that's why we want to make sure that blockchains work in the same way. Yes, it can create a record of a health credentials for any traveler, but the key thing is how different countries accept the same standard, right? So I think this is, besides being like a CEO of TRIP, I'm also the vice chairman at the Pacific Asia Travel Associations. So the Pacific Asia Travel Associations also trying to ask for collaboration between governments. And in the past few years, we try to push for one ASEAN passport, which means you only need to apply one applications to the ASEAN. You can travel freely inside without any visa. But that's the things we try to push for years. It didn't work out. So apparently different countries have different agenda. So for us, I think it will take time. However, it doesn't mean that it's the end. For example, on our platform, we are a kind of interesting platform where we have 200,000 users, but 30% of them, they are giving us their passport, national ID to complete the KYC procedure just like a bank. So in fact, if we put on top of that KYC platform a COVID security, COVID test, it can become a global passport, right? But again, how do you put like a Vietnam COVID test to a Malaysia COVID test? Right now, those are the things we need to working on, but it's already there. The technology is already there. And I think for blockchain, it's just to make sure that the trust is there. One, you put a record, it stays there, nobody can change that. But I think in order for government across the world to apply, it takes a lot of hard work. But like I say, as a community, sometimes people think that, okay, I trust you because I trust on the blockchain. Maybe we can have a community-driven passport that created by the community instead of by government.
It's interesting, you know, how you mentioned that, just like we heard before, how this Internet of Things can help us to solve some of these congestion problems, you know, which are coming in demand now because it's a health issue. It's not just an experience issue. I know we've talked about a single visa for the GMS, a single visa for ASEAN for many, many years. Very difficult. But now suddenly this COVID has us thinking in different ways about, okay, a health passport, some of those concepts may be transferable now for using that technology to allow people to get the one visa to move around. So, you know, once again, when we come out of the COVID crisis, this could be somewhere where we've been able to address a longstanding, I'd say, you know, governments have been working on it, but really the private sector and industry has been pushing this for this tremendously. How do we conveniently get people across borders? Because especially for long haul destinations coming from North America, coming from, you know, East Asia, coming from Europe, it's an amazing value proposition to come to Southeast Asia where you can visit 1 or 2 or 3 countries very easily, or you could last year, you know, on your single overseas trip. So yeah, thank you for those insights. We have another one from the audience, and I'm actually going to combine it with some other thoughts I had, and I'm going to, for Jens, is that, okay, one of the things that we're pushing for, where, you know, one of the eligibility criteria for our hackathon and our challenge that we're launching today is, you know, development of apps that let people know they can travel safely, get the right information on a destination about COVID or others. Do you think that's enough, Jens? Like, is that really enough to, you know, stimulate the demand once things begin to open up? Secondly, what other digital technologies would you pair that with? You know, once again, in order to help, you know, rebuild some of this demand and confidence for people to travel. Jens.
Thank you, Stephen. You know, it's an interesting question. I think I would go back first to open innovation, you know, because I think in the end, collaboration in finding these solutions is extremely important. Many of these solutions cannot be just quick technology apps, but they need to be more frameworks or platforms to really now get people traveling again, to kind of build a transformation that really drives a recovery. I'll give you one quick example of what we're doing here on a very small scale in the Mekong region. So going back to this idea of open innovation, we're working now on an initiative called Mekong Memories and Mekong Deals. It's a very simple idea where we go back and say, a lot of people that have traveled in the region and now are maybe back in Australia, in Europe, in North America, or wherever, are now, or in China, have a lot of visual content, photos, and maybe even videos on their phone. If I look on my phone, I have thousands and thousands of pictures of places I've been and so on. But, now we actually created a partnership where we work with various private sector organizations from Accor, Minor Group, Memories Group in Myanmar, a tour operator, Green Discovery in Laos, and another tour operator in Cambodia, Hanuman Travel. And we got together then with the MTCO, with the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, which is government, and then with a startup incorporated in Singapore to develop this technology, Envoke. So the idea is really then to go back to past guests and say, hey, you know what, you're sitting at home, very similar what Hai said earlier, you have these photos, why don't you share them, on your social media, we tag them, we bring them back into our platform. But the idea is to build a content cloud of past experience of the region. And it's like, people see them on social media, it's like advertising. You see all these real experiences people have had in the Mekong region, and then people can't wait to actually travel again. But we combine this Mekong Memories idea with something called Mekong Deals, where businesses will be able to upload their deals, their offers in voucher format, non-refundable. That gives money right back into the businesses, especially the small businesses. But now if I were to share a photo of a business from the Experience Mekong collection, where I've been, let's say in Vietnam last year, I shared it on my Instagram, for example, I tag it, it goes back, and then it's connected to that business, which also uploaded a deal, an offer. Then let's say if now someone sees it, let's say, Stephen, you see this photo, you click on it, like, wow, this is great. I'm going to buy a voucher now, and maybe, when I can travel again, I can use this voucher. If not, well, then I just at least help this business to stay alive and pay their people and so on. So this is something, but, the idea is really, this is more than just a quick app or a quick widget. This is almost like a whole a platform. And it wasn't just one startup coming up with this idea, it was a collaboration. And I think that's important. And I hope I answered your question with that, because I think in the end, we need to come together, we need to collaborate together, to find these solutions together.
Oh, yeah, that's good, Jens. And I guess you can sum it up as that, yes, such an app on COVID health and safety information would let people know I can go somewhere, maybe how to get there, but really like, why are we visiting? So this idea, once you say the destination information, the image, the user-generated content that's coming out through these platforms, perhaps some discounting that you're talking about, or vouchers or others can, work and help, especially directing people to small and medium enterprises. So yeah, which really could be combined in an app, so yes, we have health and safety information. And I think that's really a good segue actually to introducing the challenge here now. I'm going to thank everyone, and I'll thank you again before we close, but, thank you for those insights. They've been really important, I think. Hopefully we have some people in the audience that are thinking actually of entering the hackathon, because, we've had some great ideas come out about, once again, maybe the how, the what, the why. We know the region that we're focusing on for the challenge, but this idea of, keeping the destination information in people's hands, linking to small and medium enterprises. So today we're actually launching our hackathon on how to, and this would be something that, you probably very fondly remember, from your days, earlier days with Trip and startup contests and pitching and other, and we'll work that all into our program. So Asian Development Bank on the SEADS platform here. Today we're launching our hackathon on how we can use technology to help instill confidence to travel, help small and medium enterprises weather the storm and may hopefully come out stronger from the COVID-19 downturn. Some of the broad eligibility criteria that we have for the challenge are that the solution, it must be able to provide real-time or near real-time information about the situation on COVID in destinations, health and safety rules, regulation, protocols, and others, and or to integrate other planning tools, as Jens was just describing. So what other type of travel, tourism planning tools would a consumer need if we're going to move around domestically, and we hope very soon move across borders as international tourists? And finally, to broaden that, because we know that tourism is going to be around for a long time, digital tools for destination marketing. Jens mentioned the Explore Mekong platform, which has been operating for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. But there's other nascent digital marketing platforms and others that can be used or can be developed, we hope, by startups and are eligible for our hackathon. The timeline it'll be a 4-stage process. So starting today through January 4th, we'll be taking applications through the website, and organizers provide that as part of the information packet for this session, but also for our overall symposium today. So please, I encourage you to read the details there. But we'll be taking applications to the 4th of January. Then there'll be a screening process where we'll look to come to about 10 firms. Those 10 firms will receive mentorship. We have a wonderful cast of partners for this: Amazon Web Services, 500 Startups, the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, ADB Ventures, Raffles Hotel. So, these different firms will be providing mentors to the startups. From there, you'll have an opportunity to refine your pitch, gain insights from your mentors, as well as ADB staff and other industry specialists or subject matter specialists. We'll have what we'll call kind of an online seminar or a webinar where you'll have a chance to actually practice your pitching and get some feedback, probably from some venture capitalists, from your mentors, from other mentors, as well as part of that process. Narrow it down to 5 firms. And then we'll have the final pitching day. It'll be, I think, the first week of March, where the winner will be eligible for up to $10,000 in support to help trial your solution. So we hope that everyone joining us today can help to spread the word on this. ADB, we had a challenge on helping to restore travelers' confidence with our health sector working group. We had over 100 entrants for that. And we had actually a firm from Indonesia was the top finishing firm with an app for Indonesia. And they look to also expand regionally on providing COVID health and safety information. As you can see, we've actually widened the eligibility criteria a bit here for this challenge. So we really, really hope that we can get the word out between now and the next few weeks. And we look forward to receiving all these innovative solutions and hearing what you have to say, startups in the region. So with that, I think I'd like to thank, firstly, I'd like to thank Ms. Cleo Kawawaki, my boss. Thank you, Cleo, for the opening words, and thank you for joining us. We know that you're really supportive for the work that we do, in the tourism space and all these other areas. ADB's Southeast Asia Department has provided tremendous resources to our developing member countries to help address COVID. You've been a huge part of that process to get those through, so thank you so much for that. I'd like to thank Jens Transhart of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office for the incredible work that you're doing there in the Mekong region. We have our 45th or 46th meeting of the Tourism Working Group coming up, and hopefully we can report this to the members, and we can get some more interest from them and from firms in the member countries. Carolyn, these technologies and especially this idea of congestion. You close your eyes, you thought about last year about these crowds. And then now we have these health implications, giving us some good ideas and some good insights on how we can use some of these select technologies to once again help people feel safer, help to get them traveling again once we can. Allison, yeah, you're helping Corona and El Nido, reimagine their tourism destinations to be more sustainable, to be more inclusive. That project couldn't be more timely. And once again, we have examples of where destinations had to close even before COVID for some of these sanitation reasons and others. And the work that you're doing and the insights that you provided are helping to prevent that from happening again. Mr. Hai, you have access to 29 million hotel rooms, and you're helping people to post, all of this information, get that out there to consumers, have suppliers put that information out through the amazing Trip platform. That's Trip with 2 I's. Again, please, I encourage everyone joining us to take a look at that site. It's amazing. You're a young entrepreneur. You've been through this process not so long ago. We hope that we can stay in touch with you, to give some guidance to some of these startups that are going to be coming on for this competition. So with that,
Stephen, yes. Before we go, can you mention the website? It's challenge.adb.org that they have to go to, remember?
It is. Yeah. And we have it on the, maybe I put it in the chat box, or I asked the organizers to send it out to everyone. We have the sea.challenge.org site that it's listed on the information panel below this session. So there's a link there where you can go to it. I can't remember the URL, all the letters. I don't want to send anyone the wrong way. So thank you for the reminder, Cleo. And actually, I'm going to pass it back to you to thank everyone, to close our session today. So please, Cleo, over to you, and thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. I don't want to be long, but I learned a lot from this session, and it was great to get all these perspectives. But I think from what I get, from what ADB can do as, the partner building or the honest broker, is to work with our countries and in our platforms like GMS or IMGTT, all these great platforms that we have, and to try to get that consistency, right? Of trying to get that regulation or the entrance into the countries to be consistent so that people feel comfortable. I mean, I think that building the confidence at our, forte, I think, is to get at least at the regional level, to get that harmonization going and that discussion going. So, goodness, at least, if someone comes to our region, they can travel all around the region with confidence. That's, I think, our job. So very good homework for us. Thank you very much, and hope to travel to your country soon.
Thank you so much, Cleo. And I have the URL in the side box now for everyone. So yeah, thanks so much now. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for joining us.